goal setting is so important in every context of life, but we're reaching that goal way faster than I'm realizing that I'm going to have to set some other goals, because I kind of thought it was going to take me the whole 15 years to do it.
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Drew Pearson. You are listening to the Pearson Perspective. This is a deep dive into the stories and mindsets of successful business operators and investors. Let's go have some fun. Thanks for joining us today. We've got Mr. Scott Weston, who I'm really excited to talk to today. Scott and I have known each other for probably 20 years now, which is kind of wild. Scott's my go-to guy if I need a good restaurant, a new band. Like, Scott's just a cool guy, and so I'm glad he's a friend of mine. But here's a little story of when we really got to be buddies, and kind of gives you a peek into who Scott is. My parents have been married for 40 years now. 20 years ago, they went out of town for their 20th wedding anniversary. And what does any good high school student do? They throw a party. And this was pre-Facebook and Twitter and all this stuff. And so word ends up really spreading fast that whoever Drew Pearson is, his parents aren't home, we're having a blowout. So we have three high schools that end up showing up over there. People are dancing on tables. It's just good old clash and, good, clean fun. Cops end up showing up, people scatter and fences are broken and yards are rutted up. But I only had one friend who on Sunday, the day after the party, knocked on everybody's door with me and apologized and tried to make amends with the neighborhood. And that was Scott Weston. So thanks, Scott. Thanks for coming on today.
You're welcome. I do feel like there is some more to that story, though, because I probably was guilty of inviting at least 40 or 50 of those people to that party.
Yes.
So I'm not sure I had a completely clean conscience that next morning. Still didn't have to do the right thing, but here we are.
Well, I told you Scott was cool. Like, Scott has lots of friends. He's a good dude. That's why I like being friends with Scott. But we have Scott on today because he's a really interesting guy. He's an appraiser. And not just any appraiser, he's an MAI appraiser. MAI,
Mm-hmm.
Which only a very few select percent of appraisers become through lots of hard work, training, and some additional test taking. He's also a successful commercial real estate broker in New Orleans. And on top of that, he's also an Airbnb extraordinaire. And so I really look forward to kind of diving into all of those topics and seeing what we can learn today.
Yeah, I'm ready to answer anything
Great.
you got.
Why don't you kind of just start, Scott? So how did you kind of get into the appraisal world, and how did your career kind of shift through the years?
Yeah, I got into the appraisal world like most people do who decide they aren't going to be a doctor or a lawyer. I got out of college, and Drew, just to follow up on our past, we lived in Jackson Hole for a summer together. You came back home, got back to work like you should have. I stuck around for another 12 or 18 months skiing and having fun. But all my friends left to go to law or med school, and I was kind of sitting there by myself, kept running out of money, just didn't see a future for myself living out west. And so I had to figure out something to do. So I said, what does anyone do? I was like, all right, I'm going to go to grad school. I knew I wasn't ready to work yet, really. But I knew I had to do something even quasi-productive. So I applied to a few schools to go get a master's in urban planning. I had a handful of undergraduate classes, kind of, civically oriented courses, not quite law, but I knew I liked the built environment. I knew I liked the way it interacted with the non-built environment. I really enjoyed a lot of my policy classes, and I knew I was interested. And I always, being in New Orleans, I always loved these old buildings. And so without a clear direction, I said, okay, this is a program that seems worthwhile to me. Applied to a few schools, decided New Orleans made more sense to come back to, given all my contacts in the state of Louisiana and the network that I had already begun to build. So I came back. It was a 2-year program. I did 3 semesters of the graduate program at the University of New Orleans, which is like our city college here. Mm-hmm. It's nothing fancy, but it was a good fit for me at the time. And 3 semesters into it, I realized that I was probably most of the kids in my class were very socially driven, socially oriented, and were going to, they all had causes and believed in all these policies and were going to go work for the city or go work for nonprofits. And I pretty quickly realized, well, more power to them for that. That wasn't the fit for me. And I realized I wanted to be in a little bit more, something with some more money making opportunities and
Sure.
something just a little more competitive, a little more business oriented. At that time, I actually got a really specific memory, and this is kind of far from the truth, but I remember being out at a bar with my friend Ryan Gay, who preceded me in this profession because his dad is the one of the review. He's one of the head guys at Capital One. He handles all the appraisers. He started off as a fee appraiser, but I remember telling Ryan Gay telling a girl at the bar that he worked in commercial real estate, and I was like, oh wait, that sounds awesome. That
Yes.
sounds really
Yes.
cool.
Lots of money. Let's
Yes,
do it.
that's yeah, that's it. And so shortly after that, he was able to get me a job in his little in a little one man office out in Metairie, which is a suburb of New Orleans. And he was able to get me a job, and I pretty quickly realized that I liked the content of what we were doing. I liked the puzzles. Every piece of real estate is a bit of a puzzle, has its own wrinkles, nuances, and
Hmm.
challenges. I liked that about it, and I realized quickly that a lot of what we were doing was reaching out to people and learning about businesses because, what drives the value and what drives anything in real estate is what's happening inside of it. So I like that part of it too. I was like, oh man, I don't have to sit at a desk all day. I can go shake hands with people, meet people, learn what they're doing over here, meet all these kooky people, meet all these serious people. You get a good bag of people kind of doing this work. So pretty quickly, I realized it was going to work for me. The first company I started at didn't work out. It was just working for one guy who just didn't have that much work for me. I didn't see a lot of growth, and so shortly thereafter, which was about 11 years ago, I met my current employers and realized they had their hands in a couple of different things. They were, paying their bills, doing the appraisal work, but the boss was young. He was investing in real estate, developing real estate. He was brokering real estate, just feeling it all
Hmm.
out. We always had this core business. We've always had this core appraisal business, but I had a good intuition at the time that if I hitched my wagon to this guy I could see was working a lot harder than me and a lot smarter than me, that I would learn a thing or two, and ended up being very true.
Man, that's awesome. And so, when did you kind of make the transition from, you're not a full time appraiser, but you do a lot of your work as an appraisal, and then you kind of transitioned over to commercial brokerage?
Yeah, so about we had always kind of dabbled, like my boss would pluck a deal here or there, and I kind of followed suit. I've sold this mixed use building for $500,000 in New Orleans in 2015, and to me at the time, no, it was 2013. So I was pretty
Hmm.
young, and I was like, oh man, this is
Easy
great.
money. Love it.
This is absolutely great. No, it was hard. It was a hard deal. It was probably like a 4 month
Okay.
deal. I worked
Okay.
hard on it. I'm not going to say it was easy, but I sure like seeing that check come in at once.
Yes.
Um, and and I kept on that path of making one or two sales a year, selling some houses, just kind of taking advantage of opportunities I found myself in. Uh, and up until about 4 years ago, my boss Park McHenry decided, okay, enough is enough. He got burnt out on the appraisal stuff. We had a competent team that could take over that part of the business, and he said, all right, enough is enough. So he branched out and started an actual commercial real estate
Hmm.
brokerage that we've grown tremendously. I think we did 300 million in sales last year.
Wow.
We've got 10 or 12 agents now, mostly focused in the New Orleans region. We've got one guy that does big retail centers all over the South. We've got a couple of people that just specialize quote unquote
Hmm.
in different areas. But we've grown a lot in the 3 or 4 years we've been around. It helps a lot that we had a huge network going into it from 2 decades.
Yep.
And his father also has been working in commercial real estate in New Orleans since the
Yep.
80s. So we had some name recognition. We had a lot of experience and a big network on the appraisal side. And to be honest, we just kind of recognized an opening in the market. There weren't that many younger companies a lot of white heads were doing most of the deals, and we saw a lot of potential in the future for someone else to come in and kind of for the next
Yeah.
generation to take over this market.
Good for you guys. Good for y'all.
Yeah.
It,
And I've been fortunate in that I've been able one of the hardest things about being a commercial real estate broker, as you know, is that push off, is that window when you're like, okay, it's time to go make some money. It's time to go put some deals together. But you don't, you pull out your credit card and hope for the best for 12 or
yeah.
24 months. I was really lucky slash strategic about it. Or I saw this opportunity where I didn't have to take that risk, where I could keep my bills paid, keep the bare minimum going while chasing bigger deals that I wanted to put together, the type of deals I want to work in, and just being able to do that in a way that a lot of people can't with the security I got from the appraisal work. The flip side of it too is that, I get a lot of great contacts from this appraisal work.
Absolutely.
I'm able to, in just the decade before leading up to this, is both as a broker and as an individual investor, someone handing you their book, and for me being able to pick apart and put back together, a different deal every week for a whole decade has given me a tremendous amount of knowledge that you're not getting by just going out there and hacking at it on your own.
That's incredible. I mean, you've built up this little spidey sense, in essence. I mean, you've looked at thousands of deals, and very
Mm-hmm.
quickly you can kind of tell, okay, yeah, this is something I need to spend more time on, or this is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of
Yeah,
education
exactly.
it's invaluable. You can't learn that. You can't buy that. You have to.
Yeah, you can't study it. It comes over time, and like I said, everything has a wrinkle. And the real skill that I think I've honed in on is the ability to be like, wait, something's off here, or wait. And sometimes that's a good something's off, and it can be, you can take advantage of it,
Mhm.
or sometimes it's a bad something's off, and you can be like, wait, this is, we need to run away from this thing far, far
Yes.
away.
Yes. Okay, so that's really interesting. It's 2014 or so. We're getting our fingers in the brokerage world. Talk to me about Airbnb. When did you realize this is something that could take off, and we need to spend more time here?
Yeah, so the Airbnb thing started kind of accidentally. Around this same time, 2013, 2014, 2015, the housing market in New Orleans boomed. I mean, everyone, it was just like at the peak of let's call it the coffee shop peak, where everyone wants to walk everywhere
Mm-hmm.
again. New urbanism is flourishing in every mid to large size city. Everyone's, reinvesting in the city core, and like it's just booming off. And all of a sudden, me and my now wife are sitting there looking around like, oh man, we can't buy a house. Like these houses cost $400,000 or $500,000, and this is just more than we're comfortable
Mm-hmm.
spending. This is not what we envisioned at all for our starter home. Like this, being from Shreveport and she's from
That's
Mobile,
right.
the home of the $100,000
That's
house.
right.
This is far from our comfort level, um, and so we just didn't know what to do. So the first house we bought, I was like, all right, we can figure this out. There's got to be something. And back in the 70s and 80s, we have this great stock of historic doubles in New Orleans, duplexes, doubles, call them what you want, shotguns, side by
Mm-hmm.
sides. It used to be, you could have a renter in one side, live in one side, and have your mortgage covered. Okay, that wasn't the case anymore. The owner occupant driven demand was way outseating the rent
Mm-hmm.
growth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this scenario of like kind of getting most of your fixed costs covered by your tenant just weren't working anymore. The note on a $500,000 house is $3,000 or whatever, and your rent's $1,500. All of a sudden, you're like, I'm not sure this is worth the headache just for a little help.
Right.
Um, so I got this idea, and I later learned, like years later, once I started listening to podcasts, that I got this great idea. I was like, oh, a lot of these old doubles have been converted to single family homes. Okay, so let's find the right one that has a door to a room that can be rebuilt into somewhat of a tiny, tiny double that we can run on Airbnb. And this was before city regulations were in place. This was really before it had become kind of the institutionalized business that it is today. And I'd love to talk more about that later too. But yeah, so we found this house. It's right off Magazine Street. I was like, we can do this. We can kill it. And to be totally honest, at that time, it was my wife. We weren't married yet. My wife had all the money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We were engaged. I had no money. She had the cash to go buy the house. I was like, we sat down and she was like, this is more than I want to spend. And I was like, no. I was like, Alice, look, we can do this. And we made some really modest projections on the rental. I was like, you go in, dress it up, make it really nice. I'll go do the real estate sales thing. We'll do professional photography. And this is way before anyone was doing this for Airbnb. The inventory then was not as nice and sophisticated as it is right now. But sure enough, I got her to bite. She went and bought the house. We started operating it together. We were living together, and our projections were effectively doubled right away.
Wow.
So we ended up making money. We were netting about $1,000 a month.
And living there.
Now, in living there too. And this is in the smart thing that we did was like, okay, this is more than we want our fixed costs to be, but let's put all that money aside. Let's keep it all profit. Pile it up. Let's just pile it up, and we'll just scrap and pay the note and the home expenses out of our own income, which is a good practice to have. Before we knew it, we were doing it for a year and a half, and we had a lot of money saved up. And we took all of that money and a little bit of our own money we had saved, and we were able to go buy our second property. And that's kind of where the growth of it all took off for us. And we joke, I'm sitting in my office right now. My other unit shares a wall with my actual office in the building next door to us. And we joked that it was my daughter's college fund. It was on a 15-year note.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's good. And it's performed well. And, we've just kept growing from there.
I mean, it just feels like the American dream to me. It's like you sit down with your to-be wife and you're like, we got to do this. I mean, this was 5-7 years ago. You look like a damn genius, Yeah,
I know. I did end up looking pretty smart, and thankfully, we might not have been married if I would have been wrong about it.
Thankfully. So what's kind of the goal? You and I have kind of talked about you like to travel a lot. You like to kind of go to cool places.
Yeah.
What's kind of the long-term vision with the Airbnb kind of empire?
The long-term vision right now, we're at 5 right now. The long-term vision is to have the option not to work so much in about 15 or 20 years and have a portfolio of homes that I can live between and live off of throughout the year.
I love it, man.
Yeah. And, to be honest, we're reaching that goal. That was just goal setting is so important in every context of life, but we're reaching that goal way faster than I'm realizing that I'm going to have to set some other goals, because I kind of thought it was going to take me the whole 15 years to do it.
Yeah.
Before my kids start going off to college. But we're pretty close. We're looking at acquiring our 6th one this year. So either late this year or early next year. I might need to file some taxes to keep pursuing financing on my own. But yeah, we're going to be on our 6th one, and kind of that's like where I wanted to be for the whole thing.
That's awesome.
So I don't know what the move is going to be next. If we're going to keep growing that portfolio, I'm self-managing, which is a good bit of work to balance on top of my other day job responsibilities. But we've gotten our systems are pretty good, and we've gotten, we're just getting good at it. Getting them online is a big lift. For us, it takes a few months really to do them correctly, to do the marketing right, to furnish them correctly, which is something we don't cheap out on, and we don't, we invest well in them because we like to be one of the nicer options in the markets we go into. And we find that, not being cheap helps that a lot.
Yeah. You're like a nice couch. It just matters when you go to an Airbnb. It
just matters, and it lasts longer. Yeah. And if you're doing it right, and this is one of the things we're seeing a lot of right now, it's just like, if you're doing it right and you account for your reserve funds correctly, and you can replace that stuff. You're not married to it. It's not like, it doesn't sting as much as having to buy yourself, refurnish your living room at home with designer stuff. It's not a sunk cost like that.
Right.
It allows you to shift your mindset on it too, and that's where we're seeing, even in the real estate market as a whole right now, that's what we're seeing with all the headwinds we're facing. I'm seeing all these hospitality guys pushing forward on all their deals because, with the operational side of it, they've got 20, they're all chasing 15 to 20% returns. And so a few hundred, 100 basis points on an interest rate isn't nudging their models in this deal killing way. It is for a lot of other more traditional real estate investors.
Right. 2 years ago, hospitality was this like black sheep. And now you're like, oh, wow, you can make what doing that? That sounds pretty good.
I know.
It's just amazing how fast it's turned. And on the other side, if you're like in the triple net Walgreens world, like you're sunk. 100 basis points,
You're
it
sunk.
kills your whole business model.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you mentioned
Because it's just, I mean, it's an annuity. It's a fixed income product,
right,
you know.
right,
And
essentially,
if you're using debt on it, it's great. It's great if you can pay cash for them, but most people aren't.
right, right. I think the play is to buy 100, and so you have the diversity. I don't think I want just
Yeah,
one Walgreens.
but people do it. Individual
Yeah,
people go off and buy those
yeah,
things.
yeah. Good for them. So you
Yeah.
talked about processes. Talk to me a little bit about kind of how y'all think about processes. What have you learned about processes, and how does that kind of play into your business?
Um, I mean, just simple things like just so simple things that like just the communication with people. As I said, I self manage, so it's me and a little bit of Alice on here talking every day to these people, answering questions, and I quickly realized, okay, I'm answering the same 10 questions over and over and over and over and over again. Okay. Uh, well, and so simple things like finding software and finding tools within the platforms to automatically respond to these things, which are things that have been rolled out internally on Airbnb later,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, in later iterations of their software. Um, but tech, the software is what makes it all. I've got it on autopilot right now. I wake up, look at it every day, make sure I know what's going on, ping my team and say, hey, you're on this today, just to confirm. But everything from, when I started off, I was sending a cleaner screenshots of calendars that were changing constantly because of cancellations and
Mm-hmm.
rebookings. And we're missing them and we're not communicating right, and just little things like that. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And of course, there's 10 SaaS products out there that will do all this stuff for
Yeah,
you. And so finding those correct products, finding team members that are willing to use them have made all the difference in the world in my day to day. Because this is not passive income. This is not. There's stuff that comes up every day.
absolutely.
This is not mailbox money. I don't care what TikTok video you've watched that might make you think that. It is work every day, and you have to be ready to respond.
Right, right. Um, so here's my big Airbnb question. Maybe you can help answer this for me. So let's just pretend we may go into a flat economy, maybe even a little bit of a recession. Do people cut back
Mm-hmm.
on their travel expenses? How does that affect kind of the market in general, or does that
Yeah,
worry you at all?
so that's a really good question. It's something we talk about a lot across all lodging sectors. Granted, you're going to get a biased answer from me because I'm going to be
Yeah.
optimistic and say that I'm not about to get sunk for the next 2 years. COVID was a year of that. COVID was a year flat. One thing I really like about this business, and to be honest, I'm not a I didn't set out to be a like trendy hospitality guy. I didn't set out to be an interior designer.
Mm-hmm.
Set out to invest in real
Mm-hmm.
estate and figure out the most lucrative way to do that. And that's kind of how I ended up doing this. And you'll see a lot of people will do, they rent units and run on Airbnb,
Right.
and they just, they'll do arbitrage. And I have no interest in that. Like, I can go to work for cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
I can go spend my time doing that. My interest is to have a long-term hold real estate
Yep.
portfolio. And I want that to be diverse. And this is just the first asset class I'm really digging into. Um, no, I can't remember. Rephrase the question,
Do you
William.
think could a potential drop
Oh
in
yeah, in the
incomes?
economy.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's really interesting. At the end of the day, even if it falls flat, like I said, we pivoted through COVID. In the city, it's great. I was like, okay, I can find long term tenants. People aren't coming here for a
Mm-hmm.
year, and that's what we had to deal with. And I was able to break even the whole year, not have to go out of pocket to carry any of my debt or any of the expenses for holding the property. I was able just to keep it nice and steady. At the end of the day, you're left with a home,
Right.
you know. So it's a relatively safe asset class that people are always going to need. And I try really hard, and I've passed on a lot of stuff. Like, if you go into the less desirable neighborhoods in New Orleans, where a lot of people have these properties, and they're able to trick tourists into going to stay there, and it just happens all the time where people end up in neighborhoods they're not comfortable in, and you can crank some juicy returns on those deals.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never been that interested in buying anything. My rule of thumb is I don't want to own anything that I wouldn't go stay at myself, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And on the short-term rental side, and that's what kind of drives the real estate investing component of it, is that I don't want to own something that I wouldn't use myself.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean it has to be fancy. It just means I only invest in things that either are well located or have some really unique features, I think, that make them attractive to either another operator who, and as this property type becomes more normalized, I see it being treated a lot more like traditional commercial real estate in the coming years, where I'm going to be able to go sell this thing based on a pro forma rather than it just being comped based on homes in the area.
Yep.
And especially in the city, and this is in cities all over the country, the licensing is getting tighter and harder. And like in New Orleans right now, I won't bore you with the details, but they just changed the building code. So now to get a commercial short-term rental license, which is the license that allows you to operate 24/7 without any restrictions, without any homestead exemption requirements, you have to be a commercially up-to-code building with sprinklers,
No way.
ADA
No
compliance,
way.
turnaround radius parking. Now they just added, in addition to the actual parking requirement in the city, which is one spot per 2 bedrooms. And what they've done, in my opinion, is they have clipped individual operators. The second home buyer who wants to run it when they're not there, the small time investor like me who likes to pick up the well located deals. I say, I like to do deals in my backyard. I'm looking at the other side of the wall in one of my units right now that by coincidence is next to my office. The other one I have is an apartment built into my house, and the third one I have in the city is a cottage on Magazine Street, a block and a half from my house.
Mm-hmm.
So, my strategy here is to make all of these as easy as possible for me. And I've been buying them for a couple of years now, and so I've got all these grandfathered licenses.
So you are grandfathered.
It's great.
In, so they can't take it away.
I'm grandfathered in.
Well, that's a huge.
They can't
that's
take
like
it
a
away
moat
now.
for you, though. I mean, essentially, they're going to make it impossible for new guys like me to come in and compete. And
bingo.
That's a huge for you, I think.
Yeah, it's great for me on the 2 commercial licenses I hold, but I think it's kind of, the whole thing is motivated by kind of fair housing policies and trying to limit people from doing this, but really what it's done is just made it to where if you're and I've got clients and this is the product I sell the most of, is hotel, bed and breakfast, short-term rental licensed properties. I've got some really sophisticated clients with huge budgets and, with venture capital backing and lawyers and architects and engineers and really the runway to go in and solve to jump over the hurdles the city has put into place. And so now the only people really able to continue to do this and grow are institutional investors and developers.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate. It really is.
Yeah, I know. It was a little window where kind of people were, especially like local people were with a little bit of money and a little bit of, roll up your sleeve gumption, were able to get in and get a taste of some of the hospitality revenue, which is such a big part of our economy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what you said is so important, which is windows of opportunity. I've seen a few times in my career, opportunities don't last forever. Things change. We've got to be open to a different idea of the same thing we've been doing, or sometimes pivoting and doing something totally different altogether.
Yeah, and that's how I started investing outside of the city, was the regulation and the limited product here. Just, and just lack of choice too. I remember just spending so much time, like, I want to get out of New Orleans, and we don't have the best landscape surrounding us for weekend getaways. It's not the most scenic. We're known for fun. We're not known for getting outside, but we do have some nice landscapes, and we do have some nice locations. And if properly executed, like we've done on our 2 kind of country properties, there's massive demand for it. I think.
I love your summit property. It's just such a unique little property. I know. If my family wasn't so big, I'd go stay there. But like, I
can't even go there with my family.
Yeah, but it's so cool.
I'm going to go do a little work on Saturday. We didn't rent it that weekend, thinking I was going to go, and I was like, we're going to go. And Alice was like, I'm not bringing the baby up there.
It's too daggum hot, man. There's a better way.
No, but it's nice, though. I'm telling you, we were up there a few weeks ago, and the screened-in porch, the fan gets blowing, you're in the trees. It's not as hot as you would think.
Yeah, it's nice.
Once again, biased.
So what do you think you've kind of pulled away, lessons you've pulled away from this appraisal background, this brokerage background, and then also this owner-operator side. How does that kind of affect your decision-making, or what have you learned?
Oh, I tell you, the appraisal and the brokerage really ping pong off each
They're
other.
almost opposites,
Um,
I think.
in a lot of ways, they're opposite, but you can use, for the most part, I think technically, I spending 10 years as an appraiser, I was able to gain this skill set of being detail oriented. I was able to learn all the technical analysis that a lot of brokers in our smaller markets simply don't
Yeah.
have. You know, you'd be shocked. And don't get me wrong, there's a handful of really sharp guys doing what we do out here. But if you get in the weeds and really want to start, talking value, talking things that impact
Mm-hmm.
value, talking about future
Mm-hmm.
value, I can pretty quickly, and same thing when you're pitching owners. I've got this technical skill set where I can in 30 minutes put together a pro forma, look at a deal and go to someone and be like, hey, I know you think your property is worth 10, but it's only worth 8,
Mm-hmm.
and here's objective facts and reasons why this no one can pay what you think. And we deal with this in New Orleans all the
Right.
time, because you want to talk about an unsophisticated market, is we have all these multi-unit buildings that generally speaking have been inherited or someone's ended up with, or
Right.
someone just kind of runs through their personal,
Right.
through their personal cash, and everyone thinks everything should be valued on what it could be, what the amount of money it could make if it had this big renovation. And
Right.
it's just like, well, we don't. And the spread you're talking about, and I have this conversation every day, the spread these property owners are often talk about is your profit, profit a developer would seek to even go in and undertake a
Mm-hmm.
project.
Yep.
Um, so I've been able to ping pong back on that skill set a lot as an agent. And same thing, God, every one of them has made me better at each one of the professions. Being able, because you look at an appraiser, and so many appraisers get a little bit of a bad rap about being just bookish and kind of not actually in the real world. Like an agent, you're along for the ride. An investor, you're driving the car. And an appraiser, you're just kind of sitting there watching, taking, scribbling
I
notes.
like
Okay,
that.
and there can be and there's a disconnect between all of those things that if you're able to, and it's a lot of it comes back down to like relating with people. And even as an appraiser, I'm not required to deal with borrowers. I'm not required to talk to anyone. In fact, it's the opposite. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. That doesn't mean they don't want to talk to me. That doesn't mean they don't want explanations. That doesn't mean they don't want to yell at me, when something's not quite right. But living in all three of these worlds has given me a vocabulary, a tone, and just confidence to like talk to someone. And if someone wants to be unreasonable about something, the ability to hang up the phone and be like, "All right, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I can't." I mean, I understand how the real world works. I sit in all these seats in the car, if we
Right.
will, and I'm just struggling to see eye to eye on whatever conflict we're trying to resolve.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's really cool. You just have such.
And I give that advice to younger kids in the office all the time too. I'm just like, the more you learn and the more perspectives you try and take on things, the more well-rounded you become at whatever endeavor you're trying to take under.
I agree. I agree. I want to go back to something you asked. You said let's come back to this later on. The institutional kind of model or folks within the Airbnb world. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. One of the questions that we had talked about, or I looked at some of the materials, was you asked what had changed, and this isn't just Airbnb. This is a lot of property. This is a lot of property types. Is that 10 years ago, 12 years ago, you look at self
Mm-hmm.
storage, look at RV parks, or excuse me, what are they? Modular communities. You look at all these things that used to be typically mom and pop operated businesses that used to trade on 10, 12, 15, 20 caps. Uh, the chase for yield with all this money from all over the country and really all over the world is you're seeing that go to the wayside. You know, there's so many buyers for all these different property types now that the type of people getting into it and investing in it is changing too.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're seeing that a lot with the short-term rental product. And one of the things with the short-term rental product is that we don't have it's semantics is really all it is now. You call it a short-term rental. What is it? It's a hotel. It's a one-room hotel suite.
Mm-hmm.
It's no different than any other lodging property, other than its location or its styling or its layout or how many people it accommodates. It's really turning into this product that it's regulated, it's licensed. Hopefully soon we'll really see more of it trading based on its actual net income, like a traditional piece of commercial real estate. And those are the types of people you're seeing do it. We've got guys that are taking down old buildings here, doing 10, 20 unit short-term rental deals. I'm going to look at one next week that's a New York-based company that has a 10 unit mixed use deal. And you're just seeing the type of people investing in it become a little more sophisticated because they can take down smaller projects. There's smaller operators that like
Mm-hmm.
that. There's people that are becoming accustomed to staying in smaller format properties that don't feel so kind of manufactured like you feel in like a traditional flagged
Right.
hotel.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's diversifying the product type a lot.
And how about lending? I mean, are banks just very comfortable with the 10-unit short-term rental type?
Some banks,
Some are.
some
Yeah.
banks, yeah. I mean, I saw a term sheet last week on a deal we closed, a 10 bedroom hotel licensed home adjacent to the French Quarter where short term rentals are not permitted. This was a great deal that I brought the buyer and the seller on. They just gobbled it up right away because it's such a unique opportunity. Yeah, they got a pretty good rate on it.
I mean, they're like
They
six,
will do 20-year,
like below 6.
5%.
Oh,
I saw a five
that's a
percent
hell of a deal.
on a HUD
Yeah.
sheet. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
This was 2 weeks
want
ago.
that. Tell that bank to
Uh,
call me.
I know. I know. I'll tell you who it is. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty attractive term sheet. Now, granted, these are really strong borrowers,
Sure.
that really strong borrowers, and I think they've got properties. They kind of specialize in the bachelorette markets and
They've got a good story.
Nashville, Charleston, Savannah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they crush. They do really well. And I've been lucky to get to work with them.
So you kind of see cap rates continuing to compress in this space to kind of getting in single digits as we
Yeah.
move forward.
Well, that's the good thing when you start off at, and the cap rate question is a quite literally the $1 million
Yeah.
question. We get it all the
Yeah.
time. And to be honest, a lot of the stabilized product, at least in New Orleans, doesn't trade.
Yeah.
The cash flow is really good. These people have a reasonable basis they got into it on in the last 5 years. And for the most part, they're not trading. And the cap rate question it's a data question, and it's a very hard one to get real, actual answers
Yeah.
on. Because of poor accounting practices in kind of the non-sophisticated way these things trade.
Which is
Very rarely do you see someone advertising cash flow on, like an actual profit and loss statement, something you can base it off of. And I just haven't seen that many multi-unit short-term rental deals come to market.
Yeah. Which means you're proud.
I've done a few of these bigger ones, and we've had some rough numbers. Like we kind of talk top line here more than anything. And then operators usually come in with a redevelopment play or some change in strategy play. So top line's a good starting point, but they don't really take into account your expenses, especially if you're someone with some scale. Your operating costs are going to look a lot lower than an individual operator who is kind of all over the place.
Yeah. Well, to me, it feels like a good investment when we don't really have good data, when there's a lot of opaque information. That's usually a good thing.
Yeah, it takes a while to get really comfortable with too.
Yeah.
Like my deal on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, we've been operating now for 5 months, and in every deal I've done, actually, I'm kind of proud to say that I've really undershot the revenue that's ended up happening on it.
Yeah.
I've gotten comfortable with numbers, been like, I don't know, but each one has kind of outperformed.
That's awesome.
Outperformed my projections on all of them, and it's some luck. I think it's like 10% luck, 60%. I don't know. There's probably some skill in it, and just a lot of work put into it too.
Yeah.
We've been doing more and more marketing stuff on our units, which we definitely like. There's people that look way better than us out there, but we've had some really successful kind of Instagram-y marketing stuff. We had the guy that owns Turkey and the Wolf go to our cabin property We've had him go twice now, actually, and he's James Beard award winning.
Dadgum.
Like he's like the king. Everyone thinks he's so cool. He's the king of New Orleans. He's a super nice guy. He's on the Today Show all the time. He's moderately famous. He was just on Top Chef, but he's got a huge following, and everyone in the region knows who he is and really likes him. But huge, like he went up there. I was like, he goes up there and can stay for a couple nights, make a couple Instagram posts. But I think I got 500 followers and probably 15 bookings within the 2 days he was
Yeah,
there.
that's awesome.
And so that kind of marketing on these things is real. And that property in particular, like there's interesting opportunities out there. Like there's nothing,
Hmm.
you have a facility up there. There's nothing up
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
There's not a thing up there. But we're underserved in this market. People want some hard ground under their feet.
Hmm.
You got a lot of people in New Orleans that are from all over the country, and they're used to going to the lake. They're used to having pine trees around them. They're used to, being able to go to the mountains and do something that I say hard ground because it's like the thing I reference is like you go anywhere on the coast, which is our go-to vacation place for the whole region. It's just sandy and soft.
Right, right.
You can get up there at my cabin. You can wear boots or you can wear flip-flops.
Yep. I love the I-55 corridor. It's I love it, man.
Yeah,
I'm riding those roads once a week.
yeah. But yeah, and same thing in the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I think that it's a little bit of an underserved market. Amenities are important. You can go listen to short term rental podcasts, ad nauseum to hear him talk about this stuff. But I think we're a little underserved in properties that are both nice and have some decent amenities. And we're not even on the beach, but we get the same rates as people that are beach fronting over
Yeah.
there. We get the same rates as people that are in Bay St. Louis, which is kind of where all the nightlife, you know, bar and restaurant shopping action is. But if you just understand the things that are driving people to book these places, there's some lower cost things you can do, like deals you can get into that really can push good returns.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that. If you were going to give some advice to, somebody fresh out of college or, kind of late
Mm-hmm.
20s, wanting to get into this business, what would you tell them? What are kind of some guideposts to follow to have some success?
Yeah, for someone starting, and once again, there's way more people. There's so much information out there on this now, and I didn't even know what it was, and I did it. But the house hack, I mean, it changed doing that for the first time. Well, one, get a wife with a good
There
W
you
two.
go.
Get a wife with a W two, so the bank will talk to you.
Hmm.
But the house hack, if you've got enough money or can get an FHA loan, figure out a way to save yourself those $2,000 or $3,000 a month. You know, and do a little more than you think you can do.
Hmm.
Try it when you're young and you don't have mouths to feed, and you can take a little more risk.
Hmm.
And because all it can take is one little thing to kind of change your financial picture. It really can. And that's like it clicked for me that day, that first month that we were running that rental. It clicked for me. I was like, oh wait, there's ways to make money outside of my job, and they don't have to be mutually exclusive. And if you're a little clever about it, you can really change your financial picture with
Yeah.
it.
Man, that's just awesome. What a great story.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we were fortunate, and glad we took the risk when we did. And I'd also on that first house hack I did, and we did a really good job on it. We did a good job managing it. We were diligent. It was done to the nines. Professional photography, and also a fantastic location off Magazine Street. So you got to check all those boxes. You know, in a really good market, there's a lot of bad players, bad operators that can still be successful. But it's when it hits, when things go south, when COVID hits and things pause, that's when you kind of tell if you have a durable product or not.
Hmm.
Um, and I've always had this belief because we built a similar situation into the home we live now. We built a family home, and I've got a 150 or 200 square foot apartment in the front of it that we run on Airbnb in the same capacity. Um, I truly believe, even in a live-in scenario, that proving that revenue, and that's what we did when we sold our first house, proving that revenue adds value to your home.
There's no doubt.
You know, there's no
Yeah.
doubt. I mean, showing it not in, it's a management business. So the profitability is directly correlated to the quality of the management. But showing that it can be done adds value.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one rental's not like you're not putting a man on the moon here. Uh, most
No,
people
you're
most
really
people
not.
can do one. You know.
Yeah. So when we sold that first house, I actually went into Airbnb, and you can go into the financial section, and I said, okay, here's the last 3 years of
Uh huh.
earnings, and I was the only listing, I was the only single family home listing on the MLS with earnings on
That's
it,
awesome,
and we were doing $40,000 a year on it,
man.
and the market responded well, and and this was 2019 before the frenzy really happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've had a healthy housing market here, but it was we had 3 or 4 offers, we had people clawing, we had backup offers. It worked.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that's a,
And so that's kind of the commercial real estate guy in me coming out a little bit on this, like, kind of like half house hacking, half, you know, just like how, what do you do with it kind of product, just trying to implement some of the principles I see at work every day into this little business we've built.
mm-hmm. Well, it's definitely here to stay. I mean, Airbnb is not going away.
Oh,
The
yeah.
value's still there. My only concern is like, do you get tripped up when it's $10,000 a week and it's $2,000 a square foot to buy these places, and like,
Hmm.
can you get too high in these super hot areas?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a question I've thought about a lot. And I've done this where I've gone in and looked just for academic sake. I've gone in and looked at, like, okay, at what point, like, okay, I was looking at just glancing, there's a building for sale in downtown Aspen for $75 million right now.
Okay.
Okay. Like, yeah, how do you underwrite that? How do you pro forma that? You don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, there's some of these markets where the real estate is becoming kind of like art, where there's no, like, the economic forces that drive value are totally out the
Yeah.
window. And it's just like, who will pay for it? We can pull from anywhere in the world, and all of a sudden it just becomes like a grab. It's just like a glamour grab, and it's not logical. So yeah, and I'll bet you there's a lot of people buying homes in 30A and places like that, in the $2 to $3 million range, probably depending on some rental revenue.
Right. Well, that's
That
what came to my mind. That's the zip code that
yeah.
popped up. Um, but it
Hmm.
doesn't seem like you're doing that. I mean, you're still like finding value in great
Yeah,
places with more
I
durable
want to do
income.
that.
Yeah.
I can be tricked into the big shiny object, but my wife brings me back down to earth. I was like, go do what you know how to do and pro forma this, and come back and tell me. And usually I come back with my tail between my legs, and I'm like, I wanted it to get there, it's just not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. But you haven't
Some,
missed. So like you're doing something right.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. Some healthcare guy in Nashville can afford to pay way more for this than I can. Okay, like, I can't compete with his family beach vacations.
Yes.
And that's just, and I do think there's a point of return. What it is, it's property and market specific, but there's definitely a point of return where a lot of these properties, they're like, okay, never in a million years could I make this cash flow.
Yes. Some.
Because it's interesting in that regard that you're competing with you're competing with people with different end uses than
Yes.
you when looking at these deals, which is not the case with
Right.
traditional commercial real
Right.
estate.
You have different people playing different games. Uh,
Yep.
it's almost like you have a day trader and a long-term buyer of stocks. Well, they're playing different games. There's
Yeah,
not right or it's not
exactly.
right or wrong, but just don't be a long-term holder and be a day trader and think that you're a day trader, and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and I spend a lot of time looking at these deals, and it takes patience, and it takes self control,
Mm-hmm.
because I get bored. That's the other,
Yeah.
if you can't tell, I get bored, and what I've really done with kind of having my hands in all these adjacent but different pots is been able to be productive with times where I get distracted.
Mm-hmm. That's such a huge key from an investor standpoint. I mean, Charlie
Yeah.
Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, said that's really one of the keys to our success was the fact that we can just sit on our hands with tens of millions of dollars. It is so hard to do because the inclination is to spend, to go, to buy. Patience
Hmm.
is hard.
Yeah, exactly. And it is, but it also pays off too, because the more patient I am, the better deals I get into down the road, the more capital I have to deploy,
Yep.
the more I focus on making money in a scenario where I have no risk, where I'm not investing to return, I'm just selling my time, which, you hear so much about passive income these days, and everyone wants it, gimme, gimme, gimme. But it's just like, what am I going to do all day?
No one talks about that. You want to sit on the beach? I don't want to sit
Yeah.
on the beach.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe for a week, maybe every other
Right.
week,
I'm not sure
I
what.
could do a 1 week on, 1 week off.
I don't know what passive income is. When someone finds it, let me know.
Yeah, for real.
Well, Scott, this has been a ton of fun, man. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see what you've been doing and where you're going.
Thanks, bud. You too.
All right, buddy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Have a good one. Bye.
I would really appreciate it if you'd leave us a review on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you're listening or watching to this show. Thanks so much for joining us on this audio adventure. Let's go have some fun.